Today, I just want to talk a little bit more about psychosis. It turns out that's all I can really think about is thinking about psychosis. And that's like thinking about my thinking in psychosis, which doesn't even seem like my thinking. I feel like I experience it more as all this unconscious material coming up to my consciousness, and I'm made aware of it in a way that is quite debilitating and totally restricts me from daily life, to the point where my friends, well-meaning, and family, also well-meaning, take me to the psych ward. And I'm just about to return home after a 30-day stint in the psych ward, as well as, actually 2.5 weeks in the psych ward and 2 weeks in a step-down facility. And I'm thinking to myself that I really need to get back to nature and things that are simple, yet all these words keep bubbling up and seem to want to be spoken. And there's only one person in the world who I've discovered so far who I can have these conversations with, which are conversations that I want to have, but it's hard for me to find people that want to have these same conversations, because these are conversations that I would not want to impose on another individual unless they totally resonated with what I was saying. Otherwise, it could just be more traumatizing. And my thoughts arise on their own, and a lot of times, most of the time, I have the urge to write them down. But then each day, it's like I start over again because I forget. And I even forget if I said that in the last conversation I had with myself about this. So I won't be editing it based on past conversations with myself, because if I do that, it would be boring. Plus, perhaps there'll be some themes that arise that one day I'll just have this perfect conversation with myself and I won't have to think about it anymore. Because the point of talking about it is to integrate it and to end it. And that's really what I want to achieve, if you could call that an achievement, which is not having to think about psychosis anymore. Not having to wonder, why does this process get initiated in my consciousness, in my mind, in my body, wherever the hell, whichever level it's on. And it wouldn't be so bad if there was a paradigm that understood other aspects of this process that other people have also discovered and written about. But they're all separated in people dotted throughout the planet and random books. And for my part, when I first experienced psychosis, I didn't read a book for 3 years because it was difficult and I was doing other things, like trying to enjoy myself. And so there's not a framework, or there's not a network, or there's not a sort of invisible matrix through which a person can have a conversation about this or explore this without being medicalized or pathologized. So this is not a conversation that I can have with anybody that has not experienced these realms themselves through whatever means. And so that's a conversation I wouldn't have with a psychiatrist or a psychologist if I could afford one. But I can't, so I will talk to myself. But basically, I'm talking to myself because there's no one else to talk to, or very few. And also because dialogue helps to create a framework. So even if I'm able to just talk to myself enough to have some kind of conclusion on this in my own mind at some point, and sort of integrate whatever it is, this psychosis process or spiritual emergency or renewal process or crisis in consciousness or whatever the heck you want to call it. If you've experienced it, you know it. You don't need a particular name. You can call it anything you want. I've called some of it magic and mystery. This last time, holy shit, this was not a spiritual emergence. This was hell. This was seeing all the dark elements of my unconscious that were just so disgusting. And some of it was me and some of it was not me. And in those states, it's very hard to distinguish between me and not me, as well as past, present, future, here and now. These are all sort of navigation tools that we take for granted, like having Google Maps that relates to the territory of the Earth to get around the Earth. Now we don't have to have books of maps and all that kind of things that takes up space. But there's no map for when all those directions and the center of the me disappears. Now, how that disappears and why, I've probably had a lot of thoughts on that I've written down. But basically, I get to the point in my daily life where I'm walking around, doing my thing. I don't even have something that resembles a mania. There's no feeling high or anything like that. But what I've discovered is that my mania equals trying to get involved in 100 things at once. So I'm on these committees for mental health, and I'm putting art in an art exhibit randomly, and I'm looking for things to get involved in, and somebody hires me randomly to help them with this, and I have a job at the same time. And that to me is mania. If I want to call it a mania. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like just being concerned about everything and feeling like I have the potential to help people in whatever it is that comes up in the moment. And then those things pile up, and then maybe I feel like I can't keep up, and I didn't even feel that this time. It's becoming more and more subtle, as maybe I have the capacity to perceive and see things going on and feel things that are going on and just get involved. But just because I can get involved in so many different things that I come across in my daily life because I'm participating in things that I want to, so that's only going to expand those things that I want to participate in, doesn't mean I should get involved. So I've had to come to the realization that I have to 100%, and I'm telling myself this now, cut down or cut out the things that are incongruent with, I don't even know what exactly, but it's almost like I've heard about the concept of lifestyle design, and one of the people that I've read and has influenced me is Steve Pavlina. So I went to one of his workshops, and he talked a lot about lifestyle design and putting that first, even before job. So basically it's putting happiness first. So none of the things I was doing were making me unhappy, but maybe it wasn't necessarily the right things for me. So I had to quit my job because I feel personally that I'm working in a realm that has so much suffering and sorrow that it's hard to be with that and then go home and be like super happy. So it's almost like I created a lifestyle that was bipolar in actual daily life. So going from one end of the spectrum of consciousness, which was developed by Dr. David Hawkins. So, people with grief and anger and sadness, and that's not their fault, and I'm right there with them. to the higher aspects of consciousness. Not higher, but just more consciousness or less thinking and destruction. And so basically by walking that life, I was almost bipolar in my lifestyle on a daily basis. And not that I want to escape from people that are in those lower levels of suffering. I've seen a lot of it in the last 30 days in the hospital and before that. But I feel like I need to at least take a rest. Usually when I go to the hospital, which has been 4 times total, I'm pretty talkative. Well, the two middle times, I'm pretty talkative, trying to help people out a little bit, and they were positive experiences. This time, I felt like I had nothing to give, nothing to say to people. It's almost like I switched off my empathy because I just couldn't even empathize anymore. And I still did, but I just didn't participate in it. Because in the hospital, they like for us people to leave each other alone, kind of. So I decided to do that. And it was a rough ride. So I'm not sure which created which. If my attitude going into it was poor, and that created my experience, or vice versa. And it was a very terrible experience. I was also put on a treatment plan right off the bat that I had a sense would not agree with me, and it didn't. And luckily, I was able to, long story short, I was able to get myself off that treatment plan, and it was not easy. And my fear is going back to the psych ward and basically being put on a treatment plan that the authoritative doctor thinks is good for me, but I don't think is good for me. And I can't even say that assuredly that I was right. Oh, I changed my treatment plan and I'm right, I'm fine, I'm talking, because it feels like I'm always walking with one foot in the world of psychosis or confusion and another foot in the world of consensus reality. And I don't know if I want to participate in either sometimes. And to me, that world of psychosis or confusion, when I lose touch with reality and lose my sense of self or personal autonomy, is sort of informing me about things I need to change in consensus reality, that world that I share with everyone else. So it's like psychosis, all that inner information informing me to change my consensus life. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going into psychosis, which has happened 3 times in the last 15 months. So something's wrong. Something's got to give. First thing, my job. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on the next while, is lifestyle design for my psychotic mind to avoid psychosis. Because I don't get a really good mania. Like I said, to me it feels more like experiential, like it's equated with what it is that I'm participating in. So maybe I'm just participating in the wrong things, or for a while at least. I feel like I need to spend a lot more time in nature, and I feel like I need to do something that's kind of getting popular, which is sensory modulation, which helps bring a person into the present moment by senses, experiencing things in the body, like nice music or a heavy blanket or whatever. But I'd rather experience my sensory modulation in a less clinical way, like being buried in the sand or walking in a peaceful park, which I'm doing right now. It's not super peaceful though. There's cars over there, and I had to walk through a lot of motorcycle exhaust to get here, which is not pleasant. But maybe that is a sense of sensory modulation. I should be grateful that I'm able to be out and smell the motorcycle exhaust, and I kind of am. Just like I was so grateful to be able to pay a bill online. Felt so good, because using technology is very difficult when I'm in those other states, which seem to be non-linear. So it's hard to do ABC, like hands to keyboard, sign in, what is my password, pay this bill, deposit this check, whatever. So I am grateful, but I'm also feeling very cautious. So usually when I come out of the psych ward, I'm optimistic, I feel pretty good. Not always. And I just keep doing what I was doing, sort of trying to pick up where I left off. So this time, like I said, lifestyle design, happiness first. What would make me very, very happy is to stay out of the psych ward. That is my main goal, because I was sure swept into something that could have been a lot worse. And even now I'm shaken by it, because I feel like I had some sort of premonitions that maybe will come true and will actually be worse, because I didn't go down that path of being over-medicated. But I have to trust myself and just do what I can do. So, yeah, lifestyle design, very low stress. So I was contemplating stress, and I was thinking about how we live with stress. It's almost like we feel like if we're not stressed out, we're not doing something, or the stress is validation for so many things that we do to each other that maybe are unkind, because we're stressed out, we're busy. So I had a lot of stress in my life, so positive stress. Not a ton of negative stress, at least as I was aware of consciously. And that was doing so much at the same time. So now I'm trying to practice not being stressed, which not having a stressful job is one of the ways to do that. And this is really a desperation move on my part, because I do enjoy my job, but I have to put myself first right now. I have to keep myself out of the psych ward at all costs. So the first stage of that is my own life. And this might be good to get me back to my ego perception of myself as a separate body in a world full of separate bodies, which is the consensus perception. And it might not be the real perception or the real truth, but it's the way society is designed. So operating in another way can be very confusing, and I think that's what happens when I go into psychosis, is I'm operating in a different way, and then eventually I get to the outer limits of that reality. Like everything was going good, and not mania good, just regular good. But I bumped up against a wall. And part of the way that happened was I was triggered by past trauma that I still have inside of me. And so it's there. And from my perspective now, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to deal with that trauma in terms of go into victim mode over it, or if there's a different way to to see it, because I wouldn't be where I am right now at this exact moment if certain things didn't happen before. So it's hard to say, oh, I regret that happened. It happened. Things happened. And then what comes in is the memory of those happenings comes up in my consciousness. And then all of a sudden, this story of society, which is play the victim, poor you, XYZ, overlays it and takes over those events. But I don't know if that's the story that I want to overlay those things. Like, is that helpful? How is that going to help me? How is it going to help anyone? Yet it's something that's there, sort of trapped in my body, because it happened. So I'm not sure, but in my own mind, I'd like to get to a point where I can use those happenings in a different way. There must be a different way, a more empowering way than just, oh, I'm going to name my attacker or whatever the memory may be, and then I'm going to feel good about it. I don't know about that. That could be a way to do it, but I'm not sure. But it seems like the realm of psychosis pops up and brings those things back into my mind. And I have this sense that it's because I wish I lived in a world where those things didn't happen to people, because I can see what it creates. I can see what is created in me. I can imagine that it's not something I would want to happen to anyone that I care about or don't know. I wouldn't want it to happen to anybody. And I feel guilty that maybe I didn't take actions before to prevent, that might have prevented it from happening to other people, but I'm not sure. Anyways, I probably shouldn't talk about that right now. I'm not ready to talk to myself about that. I'm more ready to talk to myself about what it is I can do before I start integrating those aspects of my past to what I can do to prevent hospitalization, which is stay calm at all costs and be embodied. So my problem is not, my problem is staying myself in my body. It seems to have a disconnect sometimes, and it seems like I'm running out of steam talking to myself. I'm starting to think about these really good samosas. Even though they said veggie pakoras, they are not pakoras, they're samosas. But either way, really delicious. And I'm going home tomorrow, so I won't be able to get them. So I think I'm going to walk and get them. But thank you for listening to me talk to myself. I will talk to myself again later. Bye.